Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Informing Choices mini-pod. Two things seem destined to play an increasingly significant role in life, society, and business into the future: entrepreneurship and the internet. Both will be critical as society navigates a new landscape post-pandemic and post-Brexit. But how do these issues come together? And together, how might they impact the future? To talk about the future of internet entrepreneurship, I'm delighted to welcome internet entrepreneur and international speaker Suraj Sodha to the podcast. Suraj, welcome along. Tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here. I was that kid in high school with a massive Gateway 2000 PC when they first came out, building websites on free web portals and understanding how affiliate marketing and blogging and all of this good stuff worked from a technical point of view. And I was a real techie when I was a teenager, and I started my internet journey very young and very fortunate that we were able to afford a computer with a dial-up internet connection. And I started building these websites, started what today we call blogging. Of course, there was no social media, nothing like that at all, but I was just creating content, and all of a sudden it started to generate income and traffic, and I used to get these affiliate checks in the post as a teenager. And truth be told, my dad used to pick up the mail and throw them away because they looked like junk mail. They used to come from the US, and if you've ever seen an American check, It doesn't look real. It doesn't feel like real money. It just looks like a flyer. So we threw away thousands of dollars in commissions. But I learned how the internet works early on, and over the 12, 15 or so years that followed to today, I have been buying internet agencies. I started an online internet business, focus on helping other businesses build better businesses, or helping other entrepreneurs build better businesses through various different niches. And that my niche would be the creative space, web design, website maintenance, graphic design, that sort of thing. I've sold agencies online, and I've bought businesses online, and that's really where I sit in this internet entrepreneurship medium, if you will.
Fascinating. Well, let's dive into the discussion questions then, and let's initially just separate entrepreneurship from the internet. So what's your sense of the importance of entrepreneurship to society in the future?
So I'm obviously a little bit biased here, but it's usually entrepreneurs who solve society problems, or problems in society, and make things more efficient and more accessible, often without realizing that they are actually being entrepreneurial. It doesn't have to be a worldwide problem on a global level, but even a local society level. And we've seen this during the pandemic, how local people have been inspired to solve local problems like food deliveries for people who can't access the supermarket or can't use the internet for whatever reason. I know people who have converted their sort of fitness and physiotherapy services to solving better problems with health. And even in education, obviously with the whole homeschooling thing, we've seen how that's evolved, and those problems have started to be solved and dealt with more efficiently. Now, for me, entrepreneurship in the future won't just mean starting a business, but actually it will just define that self-motivation of people solving people problems. Now, that may lead to a business venture, and that's what we've kind of learned, or we've come to define the word around, that entrepreneurship means solving problems, yes, but it's also about starting a business and making loads of money. I don't think that will be the case going forward. And obviously the etymology of the word entrepreneur it's a French word, but it actually sounds very close to also a Sanskrit word called, I always butcher the pronunciation of this, but it's entrepreneur. And obviously that's not how you actually pronounce it, but that's what you're going to get from me. And that word actually means self-motivation. So I think that's where we're going with the importance of entrepreneurship. It's a buzzword right now because of things like Dragon's Den and The Apprentice here in the UK, but I think it's going to focus more on problem solving rather than business.
I love that notion of problem solving, and particularly the people focus that you mentioned there. So when we think about the internet, how does the internet evolve into the future? What do you think we're going to see change on the internet and the way that it's used, maybe?
I think it's really hard to predict what will change, because it's almost like, well, everything's been invented already, hasn't it? Surely. And what else can they put the internet into? They've already put it into our cars, into our fridges, into our, literally into our pockets. But what I think will evolve with the internet is more the behavior around it. And I think the internet will evolve from being something today that is surrounded, because of social media, by confusion and concerns about privacy and protection of our young people, to being actually a much more widely accepted way of life. And I think, Steve, it was before, and we've sort of come into this whole privacy concern over the last maybe 7 to 10 years, but I think we'll revert back to it being okay. It's a bit of a hoo-ha, I think, in large parts about the whole privacy concern. And you often get people shouting from the rooftops about privacy being an issue, but at the same time, they've got all of their location services on, they're checking into Facebook, they're telling people on Twitter where they are, they're posting everything about their life on Instagram. So I must question, is privacy really a concern? I think we're in a bit of a moment. We're having a bit of a moment about it, and I think it will go back to being a much more widely accepted way of life. Of course, with positive and negative effects. Positive because it will enable and empower those faster problem-solving moments, like I mentioned, and it will highlight inefficiencies in our old ways. And negative because, unfortunately, I think it will further accelerate the move away from human contact. We see it with bots already online. We see live chats. We see, the rise of work from home this year means less of those water cooler moments. Yeah. We see the Internet of Things, data sharing, and analysis. I don't need to go to my GP anymore. My watch can tell me more accurate data than my GP's equipment can tell me. And I don't have to spend millions of pounds or 7 years qualifying as a doctor to know what my heart rate means now. And I can get an ECG on the spot if I fancy it, just as soon as I come out of the shower. I don't have to make an appointment and wait 6 weeks to go and see a doctor about it. So I think that's how it will evolve.
I think going back to the kind of the security, the data security and privacy issue, it's interesting, isn't it, that kind of dynamic between how much of our information do we give away for the benefit that we get back was one of the critical components of the implementation of the NHS COVID app.
Yes.
So, that's an example, I think, of, are we willing to give up our personal privacy for the good of the greater population?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, yes, we will get to a point. We will get to a point where you'll always have the doubters and the people who sort of switch all their privacy settings off. But the majority of the population, not just here in the UK, but around the globe, will be totally fine giving up that so-called privacy, which I think is a false sense of security. We don't really have any privacy, really speaking. So there we go.
Yeah, completely agree. So one of the things we've started to touch on there, or you've started to touch on, is automation. So what role do you think automation will play in the future of entrepreneurship? And particularly, is the connection between new business ideas and job creation going to become weaker?
I think it's a great question, Steve. I think in certain industries, it will erode the need for a human being to further a business. And again, we talk about entrepreneurship here, in the context of business, because that's how we see it today. But I think it will erode the need for us as humans to play a core, not to play a core function, but to play some of the supporting functions of a business. Now, we'll always need humans, fingers crossed, otherwise we're all in a bit of trouble. But I think underneath those core business functions of leadership and strategy, a lot of things can already be automated. Accounting to a degree, customer support to a degree, order fulfillment to a degree, content creation. I've seen in my industry a lot of artificial intelligence tools already starting to pop up in creating blogs and creating ads for social media, where you now don't need a copywriter or an ads agency to come up with the ideas for you, because that's almost a single point of failure. You're using one brain, whereas an AI tool combines thousands of brains and gives you much more better data. I think it will be embraced. Automation will be embraced to do the things that can be automated, as long as it doesn't create a clear detriment to the quality and the result. There will be more accuracy, no more human error, and we'll fight it. Like I mentioned earlier, the ECGs and the medical things, the medical industry will fight it pharmaceuticals will fight it. But I think ultimately, and we're talking, generations away, where I think the quality and the results of what an automated bot or a machine can give us will far outweigh the time and the effort it will take a human to deliver that. And I think we'll come to accept that actually we're not that clever after all, and we've created something that can combine our intelligence to give us a better result.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that strike me there. One is that actually, at the very point we become increasingly digitized and increasingly automated, actually, the more human-specific traits we're able to deploy, the more differentiated we make ourselves and our businesses.
Yeah,
So,
it's an evolution. You're absolutely right.
yeah. And the other thing is you mentioned this kind of notion of the way, my words here, bringing humans and machines together. The notion of collective intelligence, I think, is growing to actually help us maximize the opportunity that bringing artificial intelligence and human ingenuity and creativity together creates an even better result.
Yeah.
So you've started to touch on artificial intelligence and a number of other technologies there. Again, if we look forward, which of the technologies you think will be critical enablers to the future of internet entrepreneurship?
I think personally, we've got AI, artificial intelligence, and ML or machine learning. They're the big ones to watch out for, and I see it happening in my industry a lot already. There are going to be there are already tools like augmented and virtual reality. They exist. But they're still, I think, in the early phases. But I think that'll become much more important with virtual events, even entertainment. Instead of needing to go to a concert, you can have Beyonce in your living room, in an augmented reality form. So I think that will start to become more and more the norm.
And kind of we could talk about this forever, but in the context of kind of containing the podcast, how might internet entrepreneurship contribute to a more human future? A more human future is something that I'm really interested in. I'm really interested in understanding how we deploy and maximize the benefit of technology for the good of humanity generally. So how might internet entrepreneurship actually contribute to that, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great question to end on, and it's all about this evolution and us recognizing that we have to evolve now, and we can't just stay stuck in our ways. But I think there are 2 points to this. The first, internet entrepreneurship will enable humans to be more human if we allow it to. Not having to do things that a machine can do better, which in theory should empower us to have more time to spend with each other. Now that could be a good thing or a bad thing, but in theory, that's the way I think it will contribute. No more trips to the supermarket, no more commuting as we've seen this year, and it will give us hundreds of hours back in the year. Now, of course, there is a certain charm to going to the supermarket and wandering around with your shopping trolley, but we've seen that there are better ways of doing it. Now, better, of course, is my opinion, but it will come to a point where I think we'll be forced into that way simply because it's better for humans as a whole, as opposed to one individual person. And secondly, of course, the theory is that these tools will allow us to be better humans for each other and give us back that time. But I think that tipping point is a generation or more away, because we'll become so obsessed with and consumed by tech. Humans will need to go through a disconnect from it, a little bit like we have learned this year about the simpler pleasures. World events and new diseases will force us to reassess every now and then how we are reliant or overly reliant on something, and not that this year has taught us that we are overly reliant on things per se, but I think it has given us a massive wake-up call on things that we knew were coming, but this year has been a bit of a catalyst, and it's accelerated a lot of things we thought were 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line. And we've already seen self-driving cars and all this sort of stuff happen already. A lot more of that, taking the human need out of doing something. That doesn't mean we don't need humans, but it will allow us, and it should allow us, if we embrace it, to be better humans and connect with each other more.
It does feel to me as well like we're kind of edging towards a world where actually we have more choice. It may need us to make some radical shifts in how we think about economy, how we think about democracy, how we think about the way that technology is deployed and the way that it's regulated, maybe. But I
Exactly.
think the thing that I really wanted to pick up just to end is the phrase you used earlier on in response to that question, allowing humans to be more human, which I think is absolutely lovely. Uh, Suraj, thank you so much for your time. Tell us how people can get in contact with you and find out more about what you do.
Sure. So the best place to find me at any point is either on LinkedIn. You just search my name, Suraj Sodha, or my website, which is www.surajsodha.com. And from there, that's where I talk about things like entrepreneurship and my businesses, which are in the online, in the website and WordPress maintenance and graphic design industries. But for me personally, the best place to find me is my personal website.
Suraj, thank you so much for your time. That's been absolutely wonderful. And thank you everyone for listening. Do let your friends and colleagues know about the Informing Choices mini pod, and I'll see you again soon.